Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the session of the Quantum Technology Training for Policymakers, which is organized by Quantum Flagship Coordination and Support Action QCATS. And today, our topic is going to be commercialization and economic impact of quantum technology. We are thankful to the whole team of QCATS for helping to organize this session, and in particular to the CNR-INO, which is preparing the program and executing the sessions. So today, on the topic of commercialization and economic impact, we have two very interesting speakers from different perspectives. And the first speaker will be Emily Meads, who is the principal at Quantonation, which is a venture capital. And we will have a perspective from the venture capital on the commercialization of quantum technologies. So let me introduce Emily. Emily, please welcome to the stage. She is a physicist by training, and she's holding a bachelor degree in and two master degrees in physics from the Bath University and from the University of Politecnica of Madrid. She is aware that the key enabling technologies can sometimes remain hidden behind academic walls, and she's most excited by helping founders to bring their innovation out of the lab and into the real world. Having spent several years and invested in deep tech at Speed Invest, she believes that the technical breakthrough drives the greatest disruption and the innovation. Physics-based technologies in particular have always had a special place in her heart and in her professional pursuit. We are very happy to have you, Emily, and we are looking forward to know about the venture capital experience with commercialization of quantum technologies. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Oxana. So I will share my screen. Very nice to be here with everyone today. Thank you for having me. Let's just pull this up. Okay. Perfect. Now, if you could just confirm that you can see my screen.
All is great.
Perfect. Great. Like I said, I'm very happy to be here today. And as Oxana introduced, today we'll be discussing a little bit about quantum technology and in particular, commercialization and its economic impacts. A few words about Quantonation before I kick off into the subject matter. So Quantonation is the first venture capital fund focused on quantum technologies. We've been investing since about 2019, 2020, and today I'm very proud to have over 235 million on assets under management. We've made 32 initial investments into startups, and I'm very happy to have facilitated the creation of over 1,200 jobs, 500 patents filed in our companies, 526 peer-reviewed publications, and today all the companies that we've invested in have managed to raise over 350 million in follow-on investments. So we believe that we're very proactive in the quantum ecosystem and intend to continue being so. So I think the economic impact of quantum technologies is something that a lot of people have thought about. There are some very bullish people in the ecosystem, such as represented by this sentence. So this was quoted in a McKinsey report published later at the end of 2024. And it says that 4 sectors, chemicals, life sciences, finance, and mobility, are likely to see the earliest impact from quantum computing and could gain up to 2 trillion by 2035. This is obviously a huge number, and I think without context can seem a little bit crazy. On the other hand, just a few months ago, the CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, took the stage and said that practical use of quantum computing was at least 2 decades away. And this had a very strong repercussion on the quantum computing stocks, which dipped after quite a long increase at the end of 2024. So I think with these 2 things in mind, it can be a little bit confusing to think about where the economic impact of quantum technologies actually sits. And I think my aim today is just to use our very short amount of time to discuss a little bit about some funding trends from our perspective and some of the aspects of commercialization. So, as mentioned, very short amount of time. It's a huge topic, which I'd be very happy to discuss at a later time with anyone in the audience. We'll go through some funding trends from the private market perspective, a quick snapshot at public funding landscape today. Then I'd like to zoom in a little bit on two aspects of commercialization from our perspective, which is the complexity of the startup journey from scientific discovery to exit of the startup, and also the customer journey, which a lot of the time is large corporate entities or governments or else. Finally, I'd like to zoom in a little bit on the importance of ecosystems at all scale and why we think that's key to the development and commercialization of quantum technologies. Since it's such a short amount of time, unfortunately, today I will not be diving into the estimated economic impacts per industry, per quantum technologies. But I can really recommend this report, Embracing the Quantum Economy, A Pathway for Business Leaders, that was published by the World Economic Program. I think maybe some people in the room may have even contributed to the writing of this report, and it goes really deep into how different quantum technologies can impact different industries and how to kind of think about all of these things. So we'll dig into a few funding trends from our perspective at Quantonation. So if you've been following a little bit in the private market landscape, you'll know that there was a big boom in funding a couple of years ago, right after COVID, that then kind of relaxed in the private markets more broadly. And today the market is adapting a little bit. So that's kind of the backdrop of what we're looking at on these charts. On the top left corner, we have a graph that displays the private funding that's gone into quantum technologies from 2014 to 2024. I like to think of the quantum technologies funding landscape in kind of two main periods. The first being on the left side of the chart, so from 2014 to around 2019, which I identify as kind of the first wave of quantum startup creations. So this is when a lot of leading research groups around the world decided to take their technology out of the lab into the real world and fund some of these initial quantum computing startups. So you had a first wave of startup creation. Then I think from around 2020, we go into the first big wave of startup funding. So you can see the funding increases dramatically along with the market trend that I just referred to, but also because these startups were starting to get a little bit more mature, right? So from 2020 onwards, we go into a big boom of funding. And I think what's really interesting to look at in terms of quantum technology specifically with the backdrop of the private market is that there was a large dip actually in 2023. So a lot of the private market suffered from the big boom that happened earlier on, largely due to probably unrealistic hype in private funding in general, but also in quantum. So there was a readjustment of the market, but quantum technologies did kind of rebound very quickly in 2024, reaching almost peak funding, and 2.6 billion of private funding went into quantum technologies in 2024. To look a little bit closer at this second wave, which I said was largely funding, I'd like to also put the backdrop, that there was continued startup creation in this phase as well. So from 2020 to 2025 today, we see funding going into the earlier created startups. Since they've been alive for a lot longer, right, they're starting to reach much more mature stages. So there's been some up to Series Plus, some exits that have happened in later years that really show that the market is not only continuing, but also evolving and maturing. This is a really key point for us as investors because you don't want to have a market with only young startups, right? We need to show that they are capable to scale into mature companies. And this is what we've been seeing in the past few years. We also see continued startup creation, as I mentioned, though it has decreased since the early 2020s. So I'll touch a little bit later on some of the initiatives that need to be taken to continue to dynamize startup creation in quantum. Just a quick snapshot now on public funding globally. Oops, sorry, skipped ahead a slide. I think a key number that I'd like to put forth here is that by 2024, $61 billion globally have been deployed into quantum technologies. This is spread out all over the world, as you can see in this map. And I think we should be really, appreciative of how much capital and how much effort is being deployed into quantum technologies. I'll link this in a little bit later to explain why this is so important for quantum technologies in particular. But I see this as a really great point of traction and belief in quantum technologies today. Kind of just to summarize a little bit what I've said, it means that basically today we're seeing that the quantum market is displaying signs of resilience despite a small market downturn. Funding increased almost to its record levels in 2024. We've seen several later stage funding rounds appear. One small error, Planck actually was a Series A that was funded, not a Series B last year. And we continue to see support from government globally that is key to developing deep tech companies. So this is kind of the funding backdrop of where we are today. I'd like to use the rest of the time today to kind of just do a quick snapshot into what I believe are two really important sides of commercialization. Right. So if we take a step in, I want to take a moment to look at the startup development journey. So this chart that I've displayed on the left-hand side here is relevant to deep tech startups broadly, and also applies to quantum technologies, even though it was created for deep tech technologies. And what I'd like to bring attention to here is that there's a real waterfall of collaborations across all stages. So on the left-hand side, we have technology development, and we see that here we're interacting with universities, government programs, blended finances. This is in the very early stages of startup creation when basically you have a scientific discovery that has high potential and you believe you're going to solve a very large problem with it. This step is very, very crucial. And this is where I want to bring attention to education and the importance of entrepreneurial culture in the early spin-out stages. Most quantum technologies do come out of research environments, and having the wrong tech transfer policies at this stage can make it very, very difficult for your startup to be successful later on. So small things like education and entrepreneurial culture, which are easy to implement, have a huge impact. So this is just on step one. And then I think what's important to look at in this graph is that each step feeds into each other. And what's important to think about here is that each step should be very much aligned with the requirements of the following steps. So like I said, from my perspective as an investor, the tech transfer policy and what stake, for example, a university or research institute will take in a startup at the early stage will directly influence whether us as venture capital investors are able to invest in the opportunity or not. The next stage, looking at product market fit, when you maybe get a little bit of support from accelerators or the broader ecosystem, will directly impact whether your customers, large corporates or governments, can work with your products and actually deploy capital into it. And each step follows very closely and intrinsically linked into each other. So the kind of takeaway here for the startup journey is complexity, and therefore collaboration and transparency being required at all stages. The second side of this, you have the startup perspective, is of course you have the client's perspective. I think in quantum technologies, this is a huge topic because there are a lot of people and entities today that want to use quantum technologies but don't know how to. And this applies broadly to deep tech as well. Each step here is very crucial to go from being a startup with an idea to being a global entity that has largely scaled deployed products. Once again here, I'm a big fan of putting emphasis on kind of the education. You need to look out for a startup for internal champions in your customer's environment that will have spent the time attending conferences, networking events, and doing basic courses on quantum technologies. This is what basically will allow people then to spend time and money into digging deep to identify industry-specific, impactful use cases that will generate business value at long time. So in summary, capital does need to be deployed continuously into each of these steps to successfully get to a point where quantum technologies can bring large-scale business value. And on that note, I think this collaboration and transparency is very much summarized by the importance of ecosystems broadly. And I think today, quantum technologies is a field which really incarnates the strengths of ecosystems. I came across this graphical interface that was published by Hello Tomorrow, a deep tech entity, and BCG, actually 5 years ago already. And it shows all the interlinks between all the stakeholders that need to come together to successfully commercialize deep tech, and also therefore applies to quantum technologies. Again, putting just very simply and bluntly the emphasis on collaboration, transparency, aligned interests. One thing to look out for, because this is quite a complex network, is that there's the risk that there are too many cooks in the kitchen, which means there are too many people trying to do too many things at once. I can only be encouraging of making sure you're very specific with the value add that you're trying to bring to this commercialization journey. And again, make sure that you're aligned with the people that you need to work with. Kind of just to summarize again why not only in general I think ecosystem development is important, but also for us at Quantonation, we try to place ourselves along the whole value chain from the spin out stage and company creation moment, where we intervene proactively at universities and will help shape and share healthy tech transfer practices. We also even facilitate startup creation. So we've spent quite a lot of effort and time into developing quantum studios, so entities that can fund very, very early stage projects that are maybe not quite ready for venture capital funding yet. And we continue to support all the way through to investing our own money out of the fund to get that first kind of time for the startup to advance their TRL and find and explore product market fit, all the way through to the later stages of funding where the company is more mature and needs to think about how to keep the best team and best technical team possible to develop their products, and proactively try to contribute to policy shaping that is of course important to continued sustained growth in the ecosystem, all the way through to proactively making sure that these startups have exit opportunities and can continue to grow. So given all that, what does the ecosystem look like tomorrow, and what do we need to do for continued commercialization and economic impact in quantum? Unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball to see into the future, so I can't claim to see the future, but I can summarize the three main points of what I wanted to convey here, which is that today the economic impact of quantum technologies is very much real. Public and private funding are on the rise, and we expect them to continue to be so. We see sustained momentum in the fields and believe that the creation and growth of quantum startups will continue. I think from my complex graphs, hopefully you retain that commercialization is difficult. The startup journey and the commercialization journey are very complex, require a lot of people. So let's facilitate collaboration, transparency, and aligned expectations. And I'd like to finally bring forth the importance of ecosystems. So physical places or digital places that are facilitating these links. I think we're very good at doing that in quantum because of how intrinsically complex the technologies are. No one can claim that they can do this on their own. So let's keep on doing that and focus on even education at the early stage. Thank you. That's it for me today.
Thank you very much, Emily, for your insightful presentation. And we already start to get questions in the chat. I would like to share with the public that now we will hear the second presentation, and afterwards we will present all the questions to the speakers, and we'll have a question and answer session all together. Please continue writing your questions in the chat or in the question and answer section. Thank you, Emily. And now welcome Mattia, that Mattia is the QuIC Quantum Industry Consortium project manager, and he previously coordinated several quantum technology projects for the University of Ulm, Kassel, and Berlin. He holds a master's degree in international relations from the University of Padua, And today, Mattia will be sharing with us the latest result from the QuIC, which produced several important documents for recommendations for the upcoming phase of development of quantum technologies in Europe. Thank you very much, Mattia, and welcome. Your stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Oxana, for the introduction. So, as mentioned by Oxana a few moments ago, I will go through some of the recommendations for the EU quantum strategy prepared by QuIC, specifically, of course, those tied to the commercialization of quantum technology. Before diving into them, I want to give a little bit of context to make you understand where these recommendations come from. And for this, I will give a short presentation of QuIC, the association. As quantum technology move from the lab to the market, it became important for companies to have their voice heard. QuIC, in a sense, is the answer to this need. We've been established in 2021 by several key business actors with the mission of growing and strengthening the quantum technology industry and the position of Europe as global leader. We are, in a sense, a collaborative hub between the various members of our association, which is as industry, of course, but we also have academic institution and investors. Currently, we have 193 members. You see some of the logos in this slide. The vast majority of them come from EU member states, but we welcome also members from other European nations, such as Great Britain and Switzerland. All our members come together and work together in work group and expert groups dedicated to the three pillars of quantum technology, so quantum computing and simulation, communication, sensing, and metrology, but also to other topics that are relevant for the industrial development. So enabling technology, standards, IP and trade, growth and funding, and use cases. All the output from this work group get condensed, let's put it in this way, into our strategic industry roadmap, which we have recently updated, by the way. It's available on our website. From this document, which is the product of our members, so our members came together to create this document, we have further distilled our recommendation, which you see now. So there are several of, we have selected the top 10. Of course, I won't be going through all of them because we are here to speak about commercialization. So I will be focusing just on 2 of them. Create an attractive investment environment and position Europe as a leader in quantum technology standards and intellectual property, because we think these are key to commercialization. If you want to look at the full set of recommendations, which is a document that goes really deeper, you can take a screenshot of the QR code and you can then download it from our website. Now, let's jump on the investment landscape, and let's start off where we are now. And I guess you see the problem that we have. Europe is unfortunately at the moment lagging behind in investment compared to the US. This is a sad reality. As you can see, there has been indeed, as Emily pointed out, an increase in globally in investment, but Europe seems, at least at the data that we have, goes against this grain. There are several reasons for this. On one end, while we have several venture capital active in Europe, they are smaller in size compared to the one in the US, and very often, for instance, difficulty in leading funding round. There is, of course, also a more conservative approach from the large funding round, and on top of this, we have unfortunately seen that, for instance, the EIP program, our program for 2025, have reduced the amount of funds available for quantum technology. All these elements have a negative impact, and of course, if we can't support the companies, it's very difficult for them then to reach commercialization. Therefore, our suggestion would be to really improve the private investment landscape for quantum technology, and this has three priorities. The first one will be to de-risk private investment in quantum technology. So on one end, we really advocate, for instance, for the EIC to protect a budget, create a stable budget for quantum technology that is not subject to the change of priority of the Commission on one end. On the other end, we need also a better support of quantum scale-ups. There is the example that the AEC has created a program dedicated to scale-up with a relatively large budget, but it is split across several domains. It would be very important to have more budget dedicated to quantum technology, and it would be also important to give the possibility to the AEC to lead investment and not just be a follower investment. Secondly, to this priority would be also to facilitate the emergence of quantum champions, and this can be done, for instance, by providing an harmonized regulatory framework, and on the other hand, by defining guidelines for foreign direct investment to attract investment from abroad, and at the same time safeguard company from outside forces. Finally, it will be also important to foster the emergence of a second wave of quantum champions, specifically in the field of software and application. Now, let's move to the global patent landscape. Why patent? IP is, of course, very important for commercialization. Without the IP, there is no commercialization. As we see in this graph again, if we exclude China, that for several reasons files a ton of patents, but for the internal market, and we look just at the US and Europe, we see again a similar picture to the one that we've seen in funding, with the small caveat that here the situation is not doesn't appear to be as dire as in the funding area. We at QuIC have prepared a long and detailed report on this subject, which you can download by scanning this QR code. Our recommendation here is really to put a stronger action on IP valorization. And this starts from the research project. So we advocate for research project really to start from there and start to think how can they commercialize the IP. how can they valorize the IP that is come from their project. In the same breath, it is also the European Union and the member state should really have a critical look at the commercial market use and commercialization of quantum-related patents. Finally, researchers need also support in better understanding how they can valorize and their IP. Therefore, better advisory service will be needed. Finally, I mentioned at the start that one of the recommendations was about standardization. It is important that we support the standardization of quantum technology. There is an effort going on in Europe through CENELEC with GTT 22. Oscar van der Velde, the chair, always says we need to do more. So we would really want to advocate to take the topic of standardization of quantum technology more seriously. We don't want Europe to fall behind on this because standards allow also market uptake. Finally, public authorities should also be among the first purchasers of quantum technology, and therefore ensuring public procurement program to prioritize the commercialization and early adoption of quantum solutions. I've been quite fast, I believe, so more time for questions. Before we go, at the end of, on the 14th and 15th of May, QuIC is organizing QExpo, is one of the largest events dedicated to quantum technology for industry. And looking forward to your question.
Thank you very much, Mattia, for the presentation of the recommendations by QuIC. And indeed, now we have quite a relaxed, a good time for questions. I would like to invite back Emily to the stage, and we could start answering. I see that Emily already wrote the response in the chat, which unfortunately reached only panelists and hosts. So I think we can use the time nicely to respond. We had two questions to Emily so far, and one is the technical one to explain what is C+ transaction, which was mentioned on the web on the slides.
Yeah. I can kick off with that. So C+, transaction refers to transactions that are from the Series C or afterwards. So the Series C in startup fundings is typically at least let's say 4th or 5th round of funding. And in deep tech or quantum technologies in particular, which can be very capital intensive, these are rounds that are typically over 50 million euros and up to, in the very extreme side, several 100 million size rounds. So it's basically to refer that we're looking at very large rounds as well in quantum in the past few years.
Okay, that's great. And Petra Soberling is thanking you for the presentation and is asking, how do you see the role of EU level funding programs and member states funding programs as well? Is there a difference who funds R&D, research and development projects, and who funds the companies?
Good question. Thank you, Petra. Is there a difference? I don't know if I could answer that with granularity. I think in a first time, both are important. So EU level funding programs and member state funding programs. If I look at our portfolio and our investments, our startups are funded by both. So some are able to benefit from member state funding programs. So this is right, your local government. I guess maybe they're a little bit closer to the local ecosystem, so maybe they can leverage some specificities of being in a certain country. But on the other hand, a lot of our startups have also been funded by programs from the European Union. So for us, both are really important, both are impactful for our startups. And I don't think I would be able to answer quantifiably which one has more impacts. In us in the early stage, both are really important and have contributed.
Thank you for the answer. You mentioned also during your presentation that there are some points which increase the probability for you to invest, you as a venture capital, to invest into the company. Would, for example, participation in one of the European or national funding program be one of such a criteria for you?
It's definitely not a criteria. So it's not, if you have not benefited from public funding, we will not invest. It so happens that because these are very technologically driven companies, that a lot of the time public funding is the best way to get your idea off the ground in the early stages. So most of our portfolio has benefited from it in the early days. It allows you to get from a very, very low TRL, let's say you have a part of a demonstration in your university lab to maybe something a little bit more advanced and start to present to potential customers. So it can help a lot, but it's by no means a criteria.
Very good. Very good. So we've got a question from Adam Lewis, and he says that the current EU program consists of many separate instruments, so optimized to allow researchers many different opportunities and to apply for funding. In this model, still appropriate now that is this model still appropriate now? Adam is wondering that quantum tech is being industrialized.
Very good question. I think in the early stage, yes, diversity of instruments is an advantage. Having very specific pools of capital for very specific projects and problems that need to be solved is a benefit. I think indeed, as you move to a later stage, at least in terms of the CEO of a startup and someone who's developing a technology that's more mature, this can sometimes be a hindrance. So a lot of the founders that I work with have their own kind of benchmarks and trade-offs as to what they will qualify as worth it in terms of effort to get public financing or not. And this is kind of probably measured just in terms of hours that it would take to complete each page of application compared to money you get back into the company. So I think as you get to more advanced stages, many small diverse instruments can be a hindrance, and maybe larger pools of funding are more appropriate that have simplified processes. But in the early stage, I think they remain crucial. There's also a lot of entities out there that today help you basically prepare these applications. So if you're in a financial position or you collaborate with sometimes free entities, you can get help moving these along. I don't know if maybe Mattia has anything to add on that from like an EU perspective otherwise.
So I think you cover. I don't really have much else to add on this diversity of instrument at the start, and then a more sharp focus is indeed the right approach. I guess I had the feeling that this question may be also going to address the big discussion that has been kicked off by the idea of removing the FP10 that was suggested by von der Leyen. But yes, I think it's very difficult to comment actually in a meaningful manner on this subject.
Okay, then let's go to the next question. We have a question to Mattia from Martino Travagnin. and he's asking, how is it that most investment money goes to quantum computing despite uncertain and difficult technology development, whereas a much more limited amount goes to sensing, where there are solid use cases and that can be addressed with less difficult technology development?
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
I'm happy for you to kick off if you want, Mattia.
Yeah, so I mean, the banal answer to this is that quantum computing is more flashy than sensing. I guess one could try to elaborate a little bit more and mention the fact that the risk reward for quantum computing is higher. But yeah, I think both answer in a sense this question. I don't know if you want to elaborate more, Emily, but I think
No,
yeah.
I think you got to the gist of it. Maybe I can just add one sentence. Venture capital, you know, whether you like it or not, as a personal opinion, is incentivized to maximize the risk reward profile, and quantum computing has a higher potential upsides and if it works right today than some of the sensing applications. So people are willing to deploy capital in this because it's kind of a binary outcome. Either it will work in the time of your portfolio or it won't. Sensing, because like you said, it's more mature, has a little bit less of this trade-off. That being said, there are a lot of people investing in sensing and quantum communication and networks as well today. And I think there's very much a desire of the whole industry to find a way to bring these technologies to allow a venture scale impact, just like quantum computing.
Okay. Thank you for this answer as well. And going to the next question from Lara D'Argento. On a scale from 1 to crucial, let's put 10 maybe, how relevant is to train quantum leaders to speak entrepreneurial? Entrepreneurial. As from the perspective of Lara, from her experience as a learning development specialist at Physicist, the first challenge has been the elevator pitch for the leaders.
Yeah, I think I agree with that challenge. Being able to sell what you're doing and explain simply what you're doing is really crucial. You know, I think everyone in quantum knows Richard Feynman, who's a great pedagogue and was very much in favor and pro, saying, you know, if you can't explain it to someone as if, you know, they're 5 years old, then you probably don't understand that. I think the same criteria should go to people building quantum startups. You should be able to communicate relatively simply what you're building. And I think that goes along with what maybe Laura called like an entrepreneurial discourse. It's very important, very crucial, and can only agree that the elevator pitch is key.
I mean, there is. Yeah, I mean, I can also add that. So I've been doing for one of the activities we do some interviews with leader of clusters, and one thing they said that several times researchers don't know that they are sitting on potential technology. So I guess it's also education in terms of gaining entrepreneurial expertise is also being able to recognize the potential of your research in terms of commercialization. So yes, training not only to speak but also to recognize that the potential of your research output in terms of commercialization.
Okay. Then one more question from Michela Capobianco, and he's asking a quick recommendation to augment quantum IP portfolio. What is the approach or strategy for quantonation for IP?
I think in very much aligned with what Mattia said, IP is crucial in the development of new technology. It's how you can defend your sovereignty in a certain space. Quantonation is very much aligned with that. I think one of the first statistics that I shared about what we've been able to do, and we're very proud to have facilitated since we started investing, is that there are over 500 patents that have been published within our portfolio since we started investing. And we very much use this as a benchmark of continued defensibility and as a key part of our strategy in quantum investment.
Okay. Yeah. We are getting one more question through the question and answer now, and it's from College. And in your personal opinion, I think the question goes to both Mattia and Emily. In your personal opinion, what do you think? What is the killer app or point of inflection where the quantum technology would become mainstream?
Well, tough question, I guess. Given the three that there are three pillars, I guess if we are looking at quantum computing, I guess once the quantum computer reach scalability would be the moment in which we really it will become mainstream. A little bit tougher to answer for communication. I would say that on that I would be unsure how to properly answer. I don't know if Emily has a better view on the communication side. What could be if, on the secure communication, if it is longer range secure space segment or.
Yeah, it is a very difficult question. I think it's like a $1 billion question as well, right? If you can pinpoint exactly what the inflection point will be for quantum technologies. Maybe not specifically on communication, but it does apply to it also. I think the inflection point will be measured when in hindsight, we can look back and say that there's a clear business value generation, easy accessibility, right? So it's no longer difficult for you to implement or use your quantum sensors or quantum communication networks or quantum computers, and the unit economics work out. So business value, accessibility, unit economics, which kind of feeds into the other two as well. And I think that applies to all three. That would be the commercial perspective. And I think I'll refrain for today from getting into the specific technical benchmarks that you can pull out also to answer these questions for each of the technologies.
Emily, in Quantonation, what type of technologies are you supporting currently?
I think we have investments across pretty much all segments of quantum technology. So we've invested in quantum computers, we've invested in enabling quantum hardware, so transduction, control systems. We've invested in sensing. We've invested in communication and networking companies. We've invested in software layers. So I think we've got most angles covered. I think in the future, because we're focused in quantum, we can continue to invest in these segments, and it's still aligned with our investment strategy. So yeah, kind of a bit of everything.
Thank you very much for the panorama of your efforts. And we have a question from Diana Tartaglia as well. And he's asking, what are the common mistakes that made by research institutions approaching technology transfer, to your point of view? And how can they act to foster the efficient collaboration with industry?
I think that the most common mistake will be taking too much stake in the company in the early stages. That really can kill a company in the early days. I think up to a few years ago, and probably there's still some universities out there that will, or research institutions or companies that are spinning out startups that will take, you know, up into the tens, you know, 50s, 50, 60% of companies, which is just makes it unfundable. You need to, I think, therefore, counter that by having kind of a unified spin out policy. And some universities and research entities in Europe today are getting quite good at that. They have a policy that's appropriate for venture capital funding to come in later. And they've done that by working with the funders to understand what is required. So I think spending time, and mainly time, just on getting all your ducks in a row, understanding what the next funders need from you, and setting that up so that it's a policy for everyone that comes through is an easy way. You can leave a little bit of margin for deviation left, right, and center if there's, you know, more IP or less IP that's being transferred, or, you know, lab facilities that are being used, but you can kind of template what needs to be set up in the early days relatively simply today. And I think that would definitely make it more efficient technology transfer. And to foster an efficient collaboration with industry, bringing industrials in early on, right? If I think a lot of companies have people that are responsible for doing technological surveys, and they will have identified potential new techs as something they need to keep their eyes on. So making sure that you get those people in the room with you to say, you know, this is what we're doing. We're not sure exactly what the intersection is with your company or your problem, but we believe there is one. Let's work together to figure out where that is a great way to do that. And kind of the earlier, the better. You can have meaningful conversations without yet having a ready technology that can help you make sure that what you're building is solving a problem and not in search of a problem.
Many thanks, Emily, for such a elaborate answer. Mattia, would you like to?
Well, I wouldn't be able to add much more to Emily. Like, although I have not directly interviewed her for this investigation I did on the quantum cluster I was mentioning before, she pretty much mirrored almost word by word the conclusion of several I interviewed, that both on the aspect of the limit of some technology transfer office. I guess if I want to mark a difference, you say that in general they're getting good in Europe. There is somebody that get the wooden spoon, I would say, is Germany, because German universities are particularly egregious in the way they do technology transfer, and so there is room to improvement there, I would say. That's the only thing more I can add on Emily's perspective, just this thing on Germany. But for the rest is pretty much word by word what I was going to write in a report, actually.
So we are coming to the end of the session already, and maybe we could close with the remarks about diversity, and that is observed by Emily in the side of venture capital, and also by Mattia from the side of the community representation. Diversity in terms of geographical diversity, and also maybe we could reflect on the gender diversity of the people involved. Just a few words of how you see this aspect in the quantum technology area.
I think there's a lot of development that can be done. It's a topic that's really important for us at Quantonation. When we invest in startups, we now include an ESG policy in our term sheets, which means that the companies that we invest in need to commit to working on some ESG goals, of which diversity among the team members I think, you could talk about this topic for ages, but in short, there's a lot of work to do at all scales. You can have a big impact starting at the education level, facilitating opportunities for people from all over the world, of all genders. And this goes all the way up to later levels where we need to see more diversity in leadership positions. Very important topic, lots of work to do, don't have the solution to it all, is I think my summary.
Thank you, Emily. Mattia?
Well, from a community side, we know that there has been some work done also within the project in which we are both involved with QuIC about improving diversity. There is we know that behind the scene there has been a lot of discussion how to improve really in the community, which still sees a relatively small involvement of women in quantum. We have had an event to try and promote these elements, but the work to be done is still is a lot. It's as a man myself, I can only commend this, and we have to enable. We don't. Even in this case, I think men should not steal the stage and be the one that lead the conversation. They should receive the input and understand that they are, in a sense, they should support this process.
Thank you very much for your reflection on this sensitive and particularly challenging aspect. And I think with this, we are ready to close the session. And thank you very much for the participation and availability. Please stay just a second after the closure of the video.